welcome back to my channel and welcome to my April wrap-up. This month I read a total of 8 books, mostly audiobooks. I had so much going on in the month of April that I was not able to read as many of my physical books that I wanted to read. I had an eye surgery and then I also had my daughter's birthday party. So I feel like finally I'm able to breathe and talk about the books that I read and then get a good head start for the month of May. The first book that I read, I listened to as an audiobook, and that is The Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy. This was my first Elle Kennedy book and it was a really easy audiobook to follow along with. There was a phase where I was just listening to a whole bunch of audiobooks and I wasn't really paying attention and I wasn't really retaining a lot of information, hence not making the read as enjoyable as it should have been. But this one was definitely really easy to listen to. I really enjoyed the characters' banter and I really liked how the story really took us from like the very beginning to the very end of their romance in their life. I love that the characters were both hockey players as well. I've only read one other book that had like hockey players, and that was Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. The male was a hockey player and the woman was a figure ice skater. So this one, they were both hockey players, and our female main character was like really tough. She was really like sure of herself. This is very much a Grumpy Sunshine. Of course, the grump being the male character, but he just had like a really soft side for our female main character, which was really enjoyable. I did end up giving this book a 3 out of 5 stars and I will be continuing the series. The next book that I picked up is Do Not Disturb by Freida McFadden. I am making my way through most of her books before I read The Housemaid because I believe that is like her most talked about book. Yeah, I'm just basically making my way through her backlist before I get to that. Do Not Disturb was very eerie and it had very strong Bates Motel vibes. I always love her twists and turns. I feel like I'm getting a good grasp on like her plot twists, but nonetheless they still are very enjoyable to read about and I still get surprised by her plot twists regardless. That is why I feel like Freida McFadden books are just really easy to pick up for me because I know what I'm getting into and I know that I'm going to be surprised, and I ended up giving this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I picked up was Daughter of the Pirate King, and that is by Tricia Levenseller. I picked this up because of a very silly goofy reason. I knew that I was going to be having eye surgery and I thought I was going to be having an eye patch. So I thought, what better excuse to pick up a pirate related book. I did not end up having the eye patch, which was very sad. It was like an open wound, so I had to let it breathe, but I did have my eyes closed for like the first 3 days and then I was walking around with this eye closed for about like a week and a half after that. So technically, I guess I was a little pirate. Regardless of the reason why I picked up this book, I was not expecting it to take the turn that it did. I placed this audiobook on hold not knowing anything about it. I just knew that it had to do with pirates and I thought that'll do. I was expecting something super light, super fun, but instead I got something like full of adventure with a very fierce and bold female main character. I loved her from the start. The story pulled me in super quickly and I was surprised like midway through the book there is like a little plot twist, which I don't know why I wasn't expecting it. Again, I think because I was expecting something super light. And yeah, it took a turn for the better. I was genuinely surprised, genuinely hooked, and I ended up giving this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is The Walrus by Abby Jimenez. This is a very short story and I wish it could have been longer. I literally found myself laughing out loud. The banter is so cute, the dialogue is so funny. I found that the characters' backgrounds were like especially entertaining because they were very like unique and refreshing, just very enjoyable to read about. I would have loved to see this get expanded even more to maybe like more story after the relationship that flourished and even the point of views of like their best friends of the main characters in the story. That being said, the best friend to the female main character of this book, his name is Izzy. Of course, I would love to see more of her. That being said, I ended up giving this book a 5 out of 5 stars. Perfect, no notes. Would highly recommend. The next book that I picked up was Bad Nature by Ariel Courage. I was so devastated because this was our second book club pick for my RL book club. I was just so excited to read this, especially because this book and Say You'll Remember Me ended up being in a tie, and I did have like a revote for a tiebreaker and this one ended up winning and I really wish it wouldn't have. This had a pretty dark premise, but it was said to be funny and hilarious, so I thought what a way to twist that dark premise into something more enjoyable to read, and I was not laughing at all. I did not find this funny at all, which was so devastating and disappointing. I really struggled to connect with the main character. Her motives were like very unclear. I just couldn't understand her. I found a lot of the things that she would do very childish and just really confusing, very weird. I just couldn't really get to like the bottom of who this character was. This main character did have a like cross-country journey, so she was on a road trip, and I felt like that was just like the biggest opportunity for like the biggest highlight of the book, and just so many missed opportunities that the author could have written something more entertaining. I feel like it had room for like growth for our main character, but instead it was just boring. I just did not find it entertaining at all. I found that it was like so much buildup to the final like moments of this book, and then the ending just fell flat for me. It was very short, it was underwhelming, and yeah, I just did not really enjoy it at all, and it was just wasn't satisfying to me. So I did end up giving this book a 1.5 out of 5 stars. My next read was another Frida McFadden book, The Locked Door. I found this one more enjoyable than my other Frida McFadden book because it does revolve around the mind of like a serial killer. And for some reason, y'all know that I'm really like invested in true crime. Something about it is just so drawing to me, like really getting into the mind of psychopaths, I guess you can say. But then the other aspect is also like remembering victims and knowing that they were real people, and I don't know, just something about it really draws me in. This book, I found it to be super captivating. I found that Frida like kept us in the dark about whether the main character was morally gray, or was she evil, was she innocent, what was the nature of the main character, whether she was fighting her natural instincts or whether she was really indulging in those dark moments. Y'all know I love being misled, and this one delivered. I was misled from the start. I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read We Used to Live Here by Marcus, and forgive me if I mispronounce this, Klewer. This book, I was so confused. The book started off super strong for me. I did also listen to this on audiobook. I found it very easy to follow along as well as I was doing other chores. And it was very creepy as well because like there was like these transitions in the audiobook, like a little glitching effect that just really added to like the atmosphere of the book. Super creepy transitions. Like I said, it was super engaging at first, but then like the last quarter just threw me off. I was so confused. I did not know what was happening. I was left with more questions unanswered than answered. Now that being said, this was super uneasy and like uncomfortable, but that discomfort, it was weirdly effective, and it really puts you inside the mind of someone who might be mentally deranged. And I think that was confusing because you didn't know what was true and what wasn't, and just being in the position of this person who is seen as crazy, and just the discomfort of knowing that it's all in the head of the person and nothing is really what it seems. It was just disturbing in the best way. I ended up giving this book a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Bright Young Woman by Jessica Knoll. Now this book, I was really dragging through it. I really just wanted to finish it just to finish it. Towards the end, the realization hit of which real life serial killer this book was based on was surprising, but at that point I had already lost so much interest. I was already pushing through just to push through. The entire time the book mentioned the defendant as the defendant, and so it didn't really hit until the author mentioned which famous person played the role of this serial killer in a Netflix series. And so that is like when it finally clicked to who the heck they were talking about. And so because of how the story is based on a real life serial killer and how he took so many victims' lives, just like the seriousness of the story, I only wanted to rate this book based off of my enjoyment. My enjoyment alone. I don't want to include any of the other aspects of this book because of how heavy and how important the subject matter is. So I ended up giving this book a 2.5 out of 5 stars. So that is all that I've read for the month of April. Usually I would jump into the books that I want to read for the month of May, but because I didn't really get to my April hopefuls, I think I'm going to keep those books as a carry-on for the month of May. So if you're still curious, check out my March wrap-up April hopefuls video on my channel and you will see what I'm going to be reading for the month of May. That being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for coming along, and I hope that you enjoyed watching this video as much as I've enjoyed making it, and I will see you in my next one.